Hello folks, and welcome into the Truck King YouTube channel. Right now, we want to talk all about recovery, because if you drive off-road, inevitably, you're going to get stuck. So that's my 1985 Chevy K10, better known as Big Green, and we've gotten it stuck for this video because we want to demonstrate proper recovery techniques and maybe more importantly, talk about the mistakes that people make and how to avoid them. And I'll tell you step one right off the top of this video: get your phone out and call your dad. That's what I did, and Dad showed up with his recovery rig. So yeah, we're gonna show you how to use all the proper equipment and get your truck or off-road vehicle unstuck safely right now. We're gonna walk through all of these recovery steps straight up in chronological order. So it starts with, hey, I'm stuck. I'm pressing the accelerator and I'm not going anywhere. Well, the very first piece of advice I wanna offer is if your tires start spinning, don't just sit there and keep on spinning. If you have no forward momentum and you're just digging up the ground, you're actually gonna make things worse for yourself because you're gonna dig in deeper. You might end up getting high centered where the tires don't have enough weight on them at all. So if you're stuck, if you're pressing the accelerator and not going anywhere, stop, get out, and assess the situation. Well, Dad, I've done it again. I'm stuck. And like I just told the folks, you got to get out, look around, see what's around you, assess the situation. And yeah, how would you go about sort of approaching this?
Well, the very first thing is we're going to put our most important recovery tool into action. The one right here between your ears, okay? And slowly, safely, common sense.
Right.
All right? I mean, everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, of course I'd do that. No, man, when you get stuck, you get nervous, you get jacked up, you don't want to be there, and then worse if you're with your kids and your wife or your family or your buddies and everybody's looking at you and you're like just going mental trying to figure out how to get out of here quick. No, quick. Quick leads to disaster.
Right. Bad decisions are made in a hurry.
So get out and survey. What kind of ground are you on? Is the truck stable where it's at? Is it going to sink anymore? You know, and then more importantly, what is my exit from this?
Right.
Okay. Am I going to pull from the back, which you'd prefer not to do? You want to pull from the front. Can I pull from the front? Can I do a straight pull? Who's going to pull me? And what am I going to use to pull? So you got to answer all these questions. But the key thing is, let's reiterate it again, never hurry. Never, ever hurry. That will lead to problems.
Now I want to go through some real-world examples of times that we've gotten stuck. Now, generally for us on our property, it's always in the snow and the ice, but yes, we have been stuck many times. And for the purposes of this video, sure, we just are standing around in a field pretending to be stuck, but I wanted to go back and actually look at some real-world scenarios and just talk about them. Some things I think we did right, and some things I think we did wrong, because of course, mistakes can happen. And there's the old saying, if it works, it's not stupid. Well, in recovery, it's more like, sure, it can work, but did you minimize the risk? You always want to minimize the risk. And sometimes you'll recover a vehicle and the recovery works. You get it unstuck, but you might have done something that was pretty risky along the way. And we're guilty of that too. So I'm going to look back at some of this old footage and talk about what we did. And as you can see right here, we got this Chevy Colorado ZR2 miserably stuck in the ice. The front two tires broke right through the ice and the rears didn't. So it was sitting on a funny angle. The rear tires had no grip. It wasn't going anywhere. So the first thing we did was just try to get out without, needing to get a recovery vehicle. I think that's everyone's first instinct, but it didn't work. So now you can see here, I got out of the truck because this is, surveying the situation. My brother was driving and I said, Matt, hold up, let me get out, let me walk around. You can hear Dad and I talking about what to do. And this, I think, was a smart idea. Go slow, look around. Now you can see, well, I've come up with an idea. My plan was, because the rears seemed like they would have more grip than the fronts, if I was to hang on that back bumper, add my weight to the mix, maybe the truck would get enough traction. Now, is this the safest idea out there? No, it's not, especially if the truck actually takes off in reverse and I'm hanging on the bumper. It could have been a little bit dangerous, but at the very least, I'm communicating with Matthew, the driver. He knows exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. He knows I'm back there. And yeah, let's give this a shot. And after a few attempts, we realized we were not going anywhere, so it was time to bring on the bigger recovery equipment. So we went and we brought in our tractor. Now, one of the things in this video I want to point out is we didn't want to get the tractor too close to the truck. Where the tractor is sitting, where you can see it, the ice is really not very deep there, whereas where the truck is sitting, yes, the water got a bit deeper. So we wanted the tractor to be far enough back. That's why we used a shorter leash that then hooked onto our tow strap, because we just wanted more distance. And that might seem obvious, but don't forget, you don't want to get two vehicles stuck out here. So yes, always make sure your recovery vehicle, you're being extra safe and cautious to make sure it does not get stuck. Now, when it came time to hook to the back of this truck, we did not have a dedicated recovery point that went into the hitch receiver. That's probably what you should have. What we did have, though, is just the chain ends on our tow strap, and we hooked them directly to the hitch receiver. Now, no, this is one of those things I would say this isn't the perfect solution, but it is still using the hitch receiver, which is bolted to the frame, which is a safe place to recover from. So I still feel pretty good about it. But yes, since this video was recorded, we went out and bought an actual tow recovery point that goes right into the hitch receiver. That's probably what we should have used. In this case, we just went right around the hitch receiver itself with a chain, and that's what we pulled from. So now you can see we're getting ready to pull. This was not a kinetic pull. The tractor, didn't need to get a run up to it. So you can see we took basically all the slack out of that recovery strap, and then nicely, slowly, and cautiously pulled. And you can see Matthew behind the wheel. He's giving it some gas in reverse, not too much though. And up and out of the hole. In this case, once we were up and out of the hole, we were pretty much unstuck. And as you can see, the truck was pretty much unstuck, but we wanted to be safe and make sure it didn't get stuck again, so we actually kept the tractor hooked up and backed up quite a ways until we were very confident that the ZR2 was in an area that it could drive out of all by itself. But during that whole pull, things were very slow, very cautious, and we were communicating the whole time. You can see Matthew has his window open on the truck so he can hear everything. I'm behind the camera. I'm yelling out instructions. So yeah, slowly and smoothly, and we got it there. And that was a successful recovery. And as this video continues along, we'll go through a couple more of our real-world recoveries. But now let's get back to talking about what kind of equipment you should have with you. To talk about equipment, I've gathered together some of the most common pieces of gear that folks use for recovery, and I'll go through the pros and cons of each. So we start with chain. Chain is generally thought of as the strongest recovery option, and a chain is going to be the most durable when it comes to rubbing and cutting and outside forces, temperature, UV, any of that stuff. A chain is going to be your strongest option. On the downside, chains are heavy. Chains are also hard to work with on your hands. Next up, we get steel cable. Now, steel cable is going to have your best weight to strength ratio because it's pretty light, but it can also be very strong. Now, you do have to be careful with cable though, because you don't want to kink it or pinch it. It's flexible, but not too far. The other downside to cable is you can get some internal corrosion if this thing starts to rust, which is really hard to inspect for. Plus, cable can also be hard on your hands if it starts to fray and you can get those little barbs that stick into you. Finally, we have a tow strap. Now, this one's made of nylon, but there are different materials tow straps can be made out of, but they're all gonna have the same characteristics. This thing is lightweight, it's much easier to work with your hands. It can also be incredibly strong, and a strap is generally going to be the most affordable option of all of these. On the downside, this is the most susceptible to abrasion and cutting and UV rays and high temperatures. So yeah, straight up, you have to be the most careful with the strap because it can fail if something, cuts into the side of it. So it's not the most durable option, but it's still probably the the preferred option when you're looking at all of these because it's so much easier to work with on your hands. It packs away into your vehicle so well too. Now, I do have to say here that all of these can be dangerous if they fail. During a recovery, there is so much energy stored in the strap or the cable or the chain, and if it does fail, that energy has a tendency to fling that strap or cable. So you have to be careful and make sure you pay attention to the working load limit on any of these things, and generally you want that working load limit to be about 2 times the weight of the lightest vehicle in the recovery. One other point I want to make about all the gear you're seeing in this video, this is all for a tow style recovery. That is when you're going as slow as possible and when the strap or cable or chain is pulled tight first and then you begin your recovery. That is compared to a kinetic recovery. A kinetic recovery is when you're actually using forward momentum and the force of that momentum to pull out the stuck vehicle. In simpler terms, you're getting a run at it so you can, really pull that vehicle out of there. Now, none of these are good options for a kinetic recovery because none of them stretch. None of them have any give to them. That's why you want to get a kinetic energy recovery strap or kinetic energy recovery rope. Those actually have some elasticity in them so they can deliver all that force, but in a less jarring and more controlled way. Now, you always want to try a tow style recovery before a kinetic recovery because the forces generated in a kinetic recovery are much higher and therefore much more dangerous than a tow style recovery. But you know what, Dad? We actually have the ultimate recovery solution with us here today. It's right down here. It's a winch. Now, of course, this is our MotoMaster 12,000 pound winch. We also got this awesome hitch receiver basket that we've installed it on. So this thing can go into any 2-inch hitch receiver. For us personally here on Truck King, this is massively helpful because we always have different trucks. So we didn't want to install the winch on one specific truck. We wanted to have it so it's mobile. So this is a great mobile solution. You can buy this winch and install it right into your bumper if you want to. And in that case, then you won't get any of these ugly cables because these will hook right up into your truck's battery or your vehicle battery. We have our battery pack down here from Renogy. That is a 12-volt battery pack. This is our inverter up here. That's 3,000 watts. We don't need this for this application, but it's nice to have that. And that's over 1 kilowatt hour of power. So it's quite a bit of power. It should run this winch for a long period of time. Any 12-volt battery will do though. So any battery you just want to haul around, you can put it down on the ground and you can run your winch. And now we should just quickly talk about a winch versus a strap or a cable or a chain or any of this stuff, because I'll tell you that if you have a winch, it's always going to be your best way to do a recovery. It's the slowest, it's the safest, it's the most controlled. The second you have 2 drivers involved, things can get a little bit hairy. One vehicle pulling another vehicle sends a big shock through the vehicle, through the driveline. If you don't have a winch, of course, we're going to use a truck to pull out a truck. But if you do have a winch, this is always going to be what you're going to default to. It's just the best recovery device out there. Okay, now we've been through all the equipment. We've chosen the right equipment for this job. In our case, it's a winch, and it's this guy right here. And I'll show you how this works in a second. But there's actually 2 other points I have to bring up just before you start pulling. The first one, if you're miserably stuck and you haven't already aired down your tires, go let some air out of your tires. When you lower the PSI in your tire, it gives it a larger footprint. Therefore, it's going to get more traction. Sometimes that one thing alone is enough to get you unstuck. Now, if you're already stuck with aired down tires, well, then that's not an option. But that's just one thing a lot of people forget. And then there's one other piece of equipment I haven't shown you yet. And that's right here, a shovel. Sometimes, yes, you got to get out and dig. Now, if you're in the mud, it's probably not the best option because you're going to shovel it out. It's all going to rush back in. But if you're in the sand or the snow, and you can get in there and dig out in front of your tire and create a path for it to get moving, that can be massively helpful. It's also going to place less strain on all of your equipment. So yes, don't forget to bring some hand tools, and if possible, do everything in your power to dig out in front of those tires. So now we're going to hook up the truck, and we get to the next point, which is that you have to hook up
to a proper anchor point on your vehicle. Now, on the vast majority of off-road vehicles, like my 85 K10 here, which I guess isn't an off-road vehicle, but it is a pickup truck, it's got tow hooks. It has big exposed tow hooks. Mine here are actually open loop, which I like because I'm able to toss it directly on here and boom. It is that easy. Now, a lot of the times, these will actually be closed loops. And if they're closed loops, that's when you want to get the D-shackle. Or there's one other thing you can do, and that is use a strap like this as a choker. That is when you hook it back in on itself. Now, usually, most brands will actually rate their straps when they're being used in the choker configuration. So this is another thing you got to look at and go, you know what, I can do that here, but it's going to make my strap weaker, and is it going to weaken it too much? So that's sort of a last ditch thing. You don't want to use a choker if you don't have to. So again, in our case, we'll go right here. Now, if you don't have tow hooks on your vehicle, you're going to want to try and find a piece of the frame underneath. Right onto the axle is usually a good choice as well. You just don't want to hook it up, you know, right on the outside of some suspension component, because then you can really damage your vehicle.
Back to another real world example now. You can see, yes, we got a Ram Power Wagon stuck in the snow. I know those things seem unstoppable, but with enough snow, you can get anything stuck. So first of all, I'll just quickly show you this. We did try eventually doing a bit of a kinetic recovery. Dad got a bit of a run up with the tractor because we tried some really slow speed sort of pulling recoveries and they had not worked. So then we thought, you know what? Yeah, we need to try and just hit it a bit, see if we can't get some momentum up. And it just straight up didn't work. Now, the one thing I will point out, this was nice and slow and controlled, and Dad didn't take too much of a run up to it. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in recovery is doing a kinetic recovery, getting way too much of a run, and getting the tow vehicle up to much too high a speed, because this puts an incredible amount of force and stress on all of the components, and that's when something can fail, and that's when things can get dangerous. So we did try this sort of kinetic recovery, even though we didn't have a proper kinetic recovery strap, but it straight up didn't work. So the next tool we got was the shovel. You can see we did bring the tractor in and it took out the biggest shovel loads, but then I just got the hand shovel and I did my best to dig out underneath that rear axle, behind the front tires, behind the rear tires, and yeah, after all that digging, it didn't really take too much of a run up to it. A nice, slow, even pull, and we got the Power Wagon out of there. But this is just another one of those times that, yes, absolutely, physical labor was necessary to dig out the snow behind those tires and get that truck unstuck.
And one other big mistake to avoid, never recover off of your hitch ball. A lot of the times you'll have a hitch installed in your vehicle or in your truck, so you think, oh, I'll just put a strap right around this hitch ball. These balls are not designed to be pulled in that way, and generally a recovery is going to put way more force on a hitch ball than a trailer would. So yes, you never want to hook your strap chain, whatever, just around your hitch ball, because sadly, people have died that way, because when this fails, it becomes a projectile and whoosh, it shoots back that way, and it's going to take out anything in its path.
So our Canadian Tire MotoMaster winch has a nice large handle here, which goes from engaged to free spool. And so we've turned that. We should now be able to pull this easily by hand, which I can, and I can walk it back over here to Big Green. So we're simply going to hook that up right there, make sure that it's inside the spring tension lip. Back to the winch. We're going to re-engage it, and we are ready to pull now. But then again, are we ready to pull now?
No, we're not ready just yet. You're right, Dad, because now we need to communicate about communication. This is another common issue that you see in recovery. People aren't talking to each other. When you're doing a job like this, any job, frankly, but especially something like this where there's multiple people involved, You have to be communicating exactly what you're doing, exactly what you think the outcome is going to be, what you want it to be, what the other person is doing. Because how often have you seen a recovery where that guy in the truck is pulling when that guy's not ready, or that guy's hitting the gas and that guy's not pulling? And that's because they're not talking to each other. And this might seem obvious, but that also means windows down. The second you get in your vehicle, open all of your windows, shut your radio off,
Yeah.
make sure you can hear everything going on, because that constant, clear communication is absolutely necessary when you're doing a safe recovery. So yeah, let's recover it and make sure we communicate.
Okay. So we were talking about steel cable earlier as far as something that you don't necessarily want to tow with. However, this 12,000 pound Motormaster winch uses a steel cable. So a bit of safety, ratty old dog towel. I'm just going to drop it right on top of that cable. That'll lift when we start to pull. The purpose is visual. One, kind of establishes the line of where that cable is. Secondly, if something does happen, it'll help it to sort of hit the ground rather than swing out of the way. But then again, you should always look at that line and say, okay, if it does let go, where is it gonna go? And then position yourself away from it. And today we're good because I've got a remote, so I can stand way the heck over there and take myself out of the line of fire.
All right, folks, we're all set up. I'm in my truck now. A few words about how you actually want to drive during the recovery. And the best advice here is slow as possible, fast as necessary. That's the old adage for off-roading. Well, it's absolutely true here in recovery as well, because one of the mistakes that I've seen online tons of times is the person in the vehicle being recovered kind of gets out of the hole, but they're carrying too much momentum, they're really hammering on the throttle, and they run straight into the back of the vehicle that's recovering them. That absolutely can't happen. To be able to avoid that today, I'm in 4 low. I'm going to put it in its lowest gear. Of course, Big Green here is manual. That makes the recovery a little trickier. But yes, you want to be in your lowest possible gear, and you want to let the winch do the work and just throttle a tiny bit just to try to help it out a little bit. But you don't want to be back here spinning your tires and going crazy while you're being winched out. If you're spinning all 4 tires and the winch is straining and you're not moving, well, then you need to go back to the drawing board because something's going to break. But for now, let's do the recovery. So, Dad, I'm 4 low. I'm in low gear. I'm ready.
Okay, we're ready at this end. Yes?
Good.
Okay, stand by. All right, so I'm going to be over at this end here. Really, my big job, obviously, other than running this winch, is to make sure that that line is spooling up correctly. So it's on me to stop that if it suddenly starts to bind up. All right, so here we go, starting now. Ready?
I'm letting the winch do its job. I can already see I'm just about out. Let it pull me the little last bit.
And there we go. Whoa!
There.
Stopping!
Stopping. I'm
Okay.
in neutral. I'm done. Shutting down. There's no tension on the cable.
No tension on the cable.
Perfect. And I do think it's worth mentioning in this scenario, yeah, we were only kind of stuck. So Dad's truck was pretty close. He could have been 20 feet away as well, pulling from even further to kind of give me more space to maneuver if that was necessary today. And another little nugget of wisdom is that a winch gets a rating. In our case, it's 12,000 pounds, but it's actually only 12,000 pounds once the majority of the cable is off the drum. Well, now you've seen that straight pull, but honestly, again, we realize when you're out in the world off-roading on a trail, you don't always have the opportunity to recover in a straight flat line. You always want to try, but if you can't, one of these might come in handy. This is what they call a snatch block. Now there's 2 main uses for this. The first one we're about to show you, which is to redirect a pull. And the second one is to actually gain mechanical advantage, and you can actually make your pulling power stronger. If you wanted to do that, you could run your cable through the snatch block and back to your own vehicle, and that's gonna double your pulling power. That's just one example. So we are gonna redirect our pull today though, and just pretend that there's something right there in front of Big Green that means Dad Truck couldn't get in there. And I'll show you how this is gonna work. So, we're gonna take our strap and we're gonna use a nice tree here for an anchor point. Now when it comes to using trees, there's a few things you wanna know. The first one, maybe obvious, find a strong, healthy tree. Don't use some old rotted out piece of junk. That's just not gonna work for you. What do you think? Strong and healthy?
I think that'll work.
I think so. Now the other thing you wanna do is get a strap that's at least 2 inches wide. That's kind of the minimum. Wider is better, but 2 inches is the minimum because you don't want to put too much stress on the tree. It's a big no-no to take your winch cable and wrap it around the tree because that can kill the tree and do some serious damage. Now again, this is the minimum width. You can also buy tree saver straps. I recommend it. If you're in a place like we are in Ontario, you're going to use a lot of trees for recovery. So a tree saver strap is a good idea. And then one other point too, Dad, is we're lucky because we have so many trees. In a lot of places in the world, they don't have trees. And for those people, you can get yourself a land anchor, which is literally an anchor that digs into the ground and then provides you a solid anchor point. Now when you wrap this, you want to make sure it's flat on the tree. You don't want any twists in there. How's that look? And then I'm just looking at the height of my truck and I'm just trying to match it because again, you want to be flat. And lower on the tree is stronger as well. I'd say about there.
Yep.
And strap is flat all the way around.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So now we're gonna take our D-shackle, open it up. We're gonna put that here. Hold that, will you? So you feed it through there like that, and then you take your snatch block, feed it onto there. Now we're gonna need to open this back up when we get our winch line, so I'm just gonna loosely tighten it for now. And there, now we are set up to do our redirect, and now we'll get the winch line and hook it all up. So that's the great thing right there about these snatch blocks is it just opens up. No, you want to go down and around. Yep, down and around like so, and then you can close it up.
Boy, it's a good thing I got you.
Yeah, you know it. So yeah, really easy to use. That thing just opens up. You hook it around.
Okay, I'll hold it here and
And then
off you
I'll
go.
feed it out to the truck. And you can already see exactly how this is going to work. That redirects the pull.
Yep.
And in this case, I'm going to go winch directly onto my truck hook. Yes, this could damage my truck hook, but I am not worried about that here on Big Green. So that's a nice solid connection right there. And yes, we have successfully redirected our pull. Now let's pull it. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, ready? Okay, pulling. And you're up. Okay, stopping.
Stopping. I'll drive forward and set the tension off.
Okay, hold. You good?
Done, cutting. All right, let's bring this cable back in. So
Here
we're
we
done
go.
now. We got to respool, and this is key. You can't just respool loose. You got to put weight on this cable. Stop! I can't pull it more driver's side because of this tree. I need you to do it. And see what just happened right there is that I could see from here all of the winch cable was spooling on the passenger side of the winch, and I can't move further that way because of this tree. So I need Dad to grab the cable right there where it goes into the fair lead and bring it driver's side because you need it to spool on there evenly. You can't have one big fat spool on one side and nothing on the other. So yeah, you with me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm ready.
Never do this with your bare hands.
Yes.
You got to have a good pair of gloves, or for that matter, a shovel handle or something.
Yeah, totally. There you go. Nice. That's good. I got it now. Yeah, let off just a hair. I think that's safe.
Okay.
Yeah, and now that's tightly wrapped on there, and that's important to make sure everything is safe.
And once you do have it wound up like this, leave the clutch engaged. Don't flip it back over to free spool, because Lord only knows you don't want this all over the highway.
Another important point too on this Motomaster, and I'm going to feel it now. So we've been using it for a while. It barely feels warm. And right in the owner's manual that it says you never want to use it for more than 1 minute continuously under heavy load. And then it just says, yeah, physically take your hand, put it on the motor, put it on this whole case, and make sure that nothing is hot. And if you do feel heat, stop using it and let it cool down. This is an electric motor like anything you have at home, and you can't just run it continuously under heavy load. So we haven't done that today, but again, something worth remembering.
Absolutely.
Finally, I have one more stuck truck I want to show you guys, and this is one of my favorites because it comes from our adventure across the Trans-Labrador Highway back in 2014. My dad went to do a U-turn, and he just didn't quite see where the road ended and the ditch began, and he drove that Tundra right down into the ditch. Now you can see here, the first thing we tried to do was get it out without needing a pull. Because the driver's side tires were still on the road, we thought maybe that could work. So we tried and tried, that did not work, and before Dad broke something, I told him, hey, cut it out, let's bring in the other truck and pull you out. So when we positioned the white Tundra, you can see Dad bringing Eric in here. He said, make sure you come to the middle of the road. We were worried that once you hooked up that truck, it might get sucked down into the ditch too. So once again, you always have to consider the positioning of your recovery vehicle. Now you can see me here hooking up the Tundra, and yes, it did have a tow hook up front there, and we had these chain ends. And you'll also see I didn't have gloves on, and in this case, it's because I was in a hurry. We were shooting for the camera. I wanted to get it done, so I was just out there freezing my fingers off with no gloves. I should have taken the time to get some. Now you can see the pull here. I think it's pretty much textbook. There's already no slack in the tow strap, nice and slow and controlled. Eric and my dad were in radio communication, so they were talking to each other to make sure it lined up. And that Tundra popped right up out of the ditch. And don't forget, we have a full video on that adventure here on the channel if you want to check it out.
Well, folks, we are coming to the end of this video. Now, first, I want to thank Canadian Tire for sending over all of this Motomaster recovery equipment. It worked great today, and there's a good chance you're going to see it here on the channel in the future because no doubt we will be stuck again. It was really dry out here today, but yes, when the fall comes and the rain comes back, we'll be out in the mud once more. And then on the topic of recovery, listen, I feel like we talked for a long time in this video, Dad, but we still only scratched the surface. There's just so many variables when it comes to recovery in terms of what equipment you're using, what vehicles you're using, how you're using them. So I think we did a good job covering that stuff, but I'm gonna circle right back to the front, Dad, to the very first point you made. Use your head. Common sense, that has to prevail. If it feels wrong, if it looks wrong, it's probably wrong. If something is straining massively, it's probably not the right piece of equipment. So yeah, we can't cover every sort of situation because there's so many you can get into, but that's, I think, the most important piece of safety equipment you have is right here, and hopefully you learned something in this video.
Well, and if I got 2 more cents to give you, every recovery starts in your driveway, long before you ever get out on the trails. If you don't take any equipment with you, well, then there is no recovery. So in other words, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. It's always better to have more gear than not enough gear, and bring several varieties of things because you just don't know what you're going to get into.
Yep. And with that, folks, that's the end of this one. So please drop in the comments. Of course, we want to hear your thoughts. Hey, have you ever been miserably stuck? Please share your stories. We would love to hear them because we've got a few of our own. We can drop them down there too. And then, yeah, as always, while you're down below leaving us that comment, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then come right back here to Truck King and see what we're getting stuck next.
Thanks, everybody.